Listening to Morning Report. Well, the government's being accused of passing the buck by asking a specialist group to look into the idea of taxing water. Opposition parties say a similar government group has already looked at the matter. It came up empty, and it won't be any different this time. Let's talk about this further with the Labour leader, Andrew Little. He's in the Wellington studio. Good morning.
Good morning, Susie.
So do you not support this government move on looking into water bottling and export?
Well, it's just another example of this government kicking the can down the road. They've done it with other issues too. You look at the multinational tax. We've got a paper, but no decisions will be taken until after the election. We've seen it with superannuation. Come up with an idea, but nothing's going to happen until after the election. Now with water, last week you had Nick Smith saying this is such a silly idea, it would never be considered. Now you've got Bill English saying, yeah, we're going to give it to this committee to have a look at, but nothing will happen until after the election. I mean, this is a real issue now, and New Zealanders are concerned about it now.
It is slightly different, though, to the superannuation question, because it's been laid out exactly what the government would do should they get a fourth term. This one, surely, isn't it fair enough that a long look is taken and that a proper decision is made?
Except then that the Land and Water Forum that the issue is now being referred to has looked at the issue of water and water allocation already. Actually, the Land and Water Forum has started falling apart. You've got parties now walking out of it because it's just not getting anywhere. And so quite what the Prime Minister hopes to achieve by referring this issue to them at this point, I'm not quite sure that can't be achieved through, the government actually just considering the issue itself now.
All right. What would Labour do?
We would have a look. We would have a very close look at the, for the water bottling companies using pristine water. They should be paying some form of levy. We think it should go to the regional council, whoever it is that deals with water consents and water management in the particular area. There is a case.
Isn't that
for
the current case, though, that this is essentially something that's dealt with by the councils? You'd just leave it in their hands.
But you'd give them, then you'd make sure that they've got the power to levy appropriately a resource rental effectively on that water use. And
what would an appropriate cost be?
Well, that's a matter for them to consider. I mean, if you're considering levying on water use for this particular purpose, it's still got to be, and giving it to the business who's going to put it in a bottle and charge a premium and make money out of it.
But how many cents a litre would be?
It still has to be at a competitive commercial sort of level.
What would be appropriate?
Well, I don't listen. I'm not an expert and a specialist in this area, but I think most people would say it is fair that if you're coming here, taking this water untreated, untouched, putting it in a bottle, charging a premium and sending it overseas, then fairness dictates that you should contribute something back, whether the funds get used for cleaning up other waterways or whether it gets used for other regional council sort of expenditure, then that's the fair thing for it to do.
Isn't just this another way, though, to pass the buck? It's a different way to, in your words, pass the buck that Bill English is doing, but that's just what you're doing. You're saying, oh, no, we'd put it back on the councils.
No, I think, the council is responsible for administering it. In terms of setting a charge, an appropriate charge.
So this shouldn't be a central government issue?
Well, I think you can involve Treasury and other sort of experts in resource allocation decisions to say what is appropriate. It's got to be something that leaves the end user commercially viable still. It's not about, no pun intended, but soaking the end user. It's got to be something that means that there's a fair contribution paid for their resource use and that the end user is commercially viable.
Okay, so you wouldn't want to see a blanket charge that New Zealand water from wherever costs 10 cents a litre, for example?
No, and I don't. Look, the 10 cents a litre issue is a figure that Nick Smith came up with because he misunderstood what was suggested by somebody else about resource rental. So, for example, if you're using aggregate or you're a quarry mining aggregate, you pay 10 cents a cubic metre, which is a lot different to in water's case 10 cents a litre. Put that aside. The point is that you can make rules that are fair. So you might say water use for human consumption, for livestock consumption, no charge, not justified. Water that is not, sort of pristine, pure water that the water bottling companies are taking, but is a different quality water, you might have a different charge for that. But in the end, you want to have a contribution for the resource use that means that the end user is competitive and commercially viable.
Why would you want to leave this as such an interesting, such a big issue that affects so many people in the hands of councils when some would say that perhaps councils haven't done the greatest job when dealing with exactly this kind of issue? I suppose I'm thinking about flip-flops around fluoridation and that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's gone from district councils, now it's gone to DHBs, and I think there is a legitimate question about where the decision for that should lie. The reality is it is regional councils who are managing water resources and making allocation decisions now. They are the ones issuing the consents. They are the ones in touch with that issue. They are the ones who can monitor water flows and water use. They've got the setup now to manage that and deal with it. They should be the ones left to deal with it now.
Do you think this is a difficult issue to handle?
It's not. It's not easy because there is complexity to it, but it's not an impossible or insurmountable issue, and it's one we have to deal with as a matter of fairness. We have to deal with it.
But David Parker seems to say that this could be done virtually straight away. The quote is you could do it really quickly. We already charge royalties on oil, on gas, on coal, even when gravel is extracted. You just extend that principle to water.
Yeah, so
why not just do it?
So you got to work out a regime to do it, and that's why I said that regional councils administer it. You might want to involve Treasury and other central government departments in setting up the regime and setting striking a rate for it for sure. So it can be done, but there will be other issues. There will be the issue of Māori rights in it, and that's you don't have to get into the issue about who owns water. But if there's a resource rental being applied to water, in the way that, for example, 25 years ago applied to fisheries, then Māori will have a claim about it, and we're going to have to deal with that as well.
Appreciate your time. Thank you very much for coming into the studio. The Labour leader, Andrew Little, there.